going to show you how to make a little frog that can go on the top of your pin. So I've decorated my pin with some fun silly nillies, and now I've got some fun colors picked out that I'm going to mix together. And then I've also got a little eyeball, which you can see on my other videos how to make an eyeball. So first of all, I'm going to just take these colors and I'm going to do what I call marbleizing. So I'm just sort of wadding them together, and then I just sort of squish them. Sometimes people do this in a more orderly fashion, making little worms of color and putting them together, but I just like to sort of let them squish. And then I'm sort of like doing what you would do if you're going to mix a color, but you stop before it gets all mixed up. So I'm twisting, folding it up, and squishing it together again, making it longer. I like this marbleized look. There's so many other designs you can make and ways that you can decorate to make your little frog, but this is just a really simple, fun way. So I'm gonna have to test it because you don't really know what's happening by looking on the outside. So I like to slice it in the middle, and then I can see how it looks when it's rolling together. So that looks pretty fun. I'll just kind of squish that together. And now, to get your frog body, every frog can be different sized or whatever you want to do. I'm just gonna kind of roll it into a little chunk that's about maybe a little less than 1 inch in diameter. And then I'll slice off one slice that's going to be the body. And then I'm going to make it smaller for the head. So I'm just squeezing that down a little bit. Cut off a little piece for the head. These are about 1/4 inch thick. Now I need just a little bit for the arms. Actually, I'll cut another slice about the same as the head, and then I'll cut it in half diagonally. And now for the other legs, I'm going to cut off 2 more slices for the other legs, the big legs. Okay, so first of all, the body is going to be just basically a little squish there and a little squish there. So it looks kind of like a triangle, but it's a rounded triangle. It's not really pointy. That. And then I'm going to take the head and just do almost the same. Well, I'm going to hold it in my hand like this, and I'm just going to flatten that one so that sort of triangulates it there too. And maybe give it a little squish, round it out just a little bit. But I don't want it to get flat. I want it to stay pretty big, pretty thick. And I'm going to just lay that right on top, right on the very edge, and give it a little squish. So now I have my basic frog form. And now to make the legs, or really more the hands on this one, I'm going to take this and sort of, so I had that pointier edge, and I'm just going to press that down, and then I'm going to take this whole thing and flatten it. So I'm sort of making a little bit more of a flattened triangle. Not getting too big, keeping it fairly small, not too flat, just a little bit. And I'm going to cut 2 little notches in it. That makes the toes. And then I open it up and pinch it. And that makes little hands. And then do the same thing again on the other one. And just give it a little pinch. There I go with my little toes. So now's when I want to add it to my tip of to the top of my pin. So I like to make a little frog sort of sticking over the edge. So I'm going to stick his head over the edge a little bit, kind of squish him on there. You can bend his head a little bit if you want to. And then I put his little hands so that they are on his body, and then wrapping around the pin. And do the same thing on the other side. Of course, you can make his hands in any kind of gesture, like you could make his hand up to his face if you want to. Now for the back legs, they're a little more challenging. You're just going to take this piece and you're going to form it into like a really long triangle and pretty flat. So you're pulling it and pinching it, getting it longer. And this end's flatter because that's where the foot's going to go. You do 2 little notches again, and then separate the toes and give them a little pinch on each one. There you go. Got one leg down. Now the next leg, I'm going to give a little pull and pinch to make that longer. And it's going to get pretty much, you want them to be the same. Of course, they're not going to be exactly right next to each other. It's not going to be obvious, but you could sort of size them up to each other. And give 2 little notches for toes. Open up the toes, give them a pinch. Just like that. Now I've got my legs. Now to get the frog legs to look like they're frog, like they've got that little frog bend, I add the frog's legs on pointing up so it looks like it's going forward. And then you bend it back. And that gives you that little kind of frog knee bend. Now at that point you can bend it out a little bit, bend it around, however you want to. Do the same thing on the other one. So I'm adding that frog leg as if it's going forward, and then bend it and add it on, however you want to. Now the only last step here is to put on the eyes, and then you really come to life. So I'm taking 2 little tiny slices off of my little eyeball cane I've got here, and I add them right there on top. Now usually I don't want him to look like he has eyes going both ways, so I like to put a little bit of clay on the back there. I have a little bit left over of my scraps. I could use that. I could just cut off kind of a little piece and maybe form it into, I could do like 2 little kind of like eyelids, which would be just rounded little circles, flattened, and then press them right on the back of that eye, being careful not to squish the eye too much because I want it just to look good. And there he is. One other detail that I like to do sometimes is add on little nostrils, little frog nostrils with the toothpick, and then he really comes to life. There you go. And then you just bake it in the oven at 275 for 30 minutes.